Forensic psychologists are all about where the law and psychology intersect. So forensic psychologists are often involved in expert testimony, for example, like false memories. You might, if you're an expert in that area, you might be called in to testify for the defense or for the prosecution. They're involved in custody evaluations. Forensic psychologists would be involved in competency hearings. You know, is this person competent to stand trial? So any place where, or any presenting problem that where the law and psychology might intersect is where forensic psychologists might show up. Health psychologists are where psychology and a person's medical condition intersect. So health psychologists can be found working in hospital settings oftentimes. And so they're there to help individuals work on psychological issues that can help them with the recovery process, the treatment process in and of itself, to help cancer survivors focus on things that we know in the research can help us recover more effectively and maybe improve our lifespan outcomes. Health psychologists. Industrial organizational psychologists work in industry, so their overriding goal is to help industry be more productive. So they might be involved with hiring and firings. They might be involved with helping increase morale in the system. Now that might be incongruent in some respect with the first one. I mean, if you're firing people, that's not helping morale with those people who are being fired. But there are some people who disrupt a system, who it's not a good fit for them to be in the system. And so you do need to sometimes make some hard calls there. But morale might be an important thing to address. But anything that they can do that helps with outcomes, production outcomes, is important. So you may play positive roles, like focusing on morale, or negative roles where you might be involved in firing. I remember working years ago at Andrews University with the radio station on campus. We had an NPR contract, and so we're involved in making cassettes for NPR. And one day a guy came in. We were just told he was a psychologist, period, and he was just going to talk to people. And he came in and he talked to a whole bunch of us. And he must have spent about 30, 45 minutes with me just talking, you know. And you know, I kept working. You know, at times I kind of felt like he was kind of getting in the way with what I had to do. But I was very cordial to him, very nice. And eventually he was done, and he walked over and he started talking to another person who was working there. And this guy stopped working. And they must have just talked for a couple hours. And you know, it looked like they were really engaged, and the conversation was very pleasant, that sort of thing. Well, the next day, found out this guy had been fired, and found out that this was an industrial organizational psychologist who was there to evaluate how effective we were in terms of working and staying on task. And so his goal was to try to distract us to see how we would respond. And with that gentleman, the other student, he was able to distract him and actually target him as someone who could be then expendable. And he was fired as a result, sadly. Anyway, but that's some of what industrial organizational psychologists might do. Now, neuropsychologists and rehabilitation psychologists kind of sometimes work hand in hand. Neuropsychologists are there to evaluate what's going on in terms of maybe brain injury, you know, what's been salvaged, what needs to be worked on, what are some of the things, recommendations that might help this person in his or her recovery process. They're not necessarily involved with the recovery process. Rehabilitation psychologists are more involved with that process, but they're certainly there with the assessment and recommendations. Rehabilitation psychologists are there to help people learn how to adapt to whatever deficits they're going through, or with the recovery process, how to adapt more effectively. They're there to work with the family systems to kind of create realistic expectations in terms of outcomes, for example. So they're all about the rehabilitation process. So these are some of the areas, and the last one there. Let me see if I can go down lower on the page. Oh, I've actually got two more here I need to talk about. Social psychologists. Let me just talk about them real briefly. Social psychologists are folks who basically want to understand group situations more effectively, so that we can improve communicational skills and interaction skills in group settings. So they can be involved in research and or training, conflict resolution, that sort of thing. But they're all about understanding social dynamics. So if that's your cup of tea, that might be something you'd gravitate towards. Sports psychologists are all about increasing output in terms of athletic outcomes. So maybe I'm a baseball player and I'm in a batting slump. A sports psychologist might be drawn in to help me work out of that slump. Maybe somebody gets a reputation of being a great sports psychologist in the field of golf, and so I might elicit his or her services to help me improve my game of golf. We do know that mind plays a strong role in terms of a lot of issues, notwithstanding sports-related issues. Sometimes the mind does play a significant role in that process. I remember reading about a prisoner of war, a guy by the last name of Nesmith, and it was during the Vietnam era. He was a prisoner of war, I believe, for 5 years. And during that 5-year period, he was in a 5 foot by 5 foot cage. So, unless he was very short, he didn't get a long period of the day to stand up straight. But he did a lot of exercises and that sort of thing. And every day, what he did is he played an entire 18-round of golf in his mind, from beginning to end, in as much detail as possible, from the type of breeze that was taking place, throwing the sand up in the air and seeing the wind blow, and all sorts of different terrains and everything. And mind you, during that 5-year period, he had some outside activities. He wasn't kept in that cage all the time, but he never picked up a golf club to play golf. Well, when he got back home, his first game of golf, he actually took off, 10 to 20 strokes in terms of his game. So his game improved significantly, never picking up a golf club during that 5-year period. That just illustrates the power of the brain. And if working in the sports arena is your cup of tea, that's certainly an area you can kind of gravitate towards. We're going to see a few media clips, and hopefully you'll find them interesting. These clips relate to some of these different fields we've talked about. Thank you.